Now the next step is an act of pure genius. It is not an original idea by any means. It is a very, very ancient spiritual teaching. None of these steps are new. None of these things are new. What's new is the order and the putting of them all together on the same page for the first time as a path to follow. It says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, anyone with a well-defined addiction knows where to start when you get to step 4, because they're on this path because they've hurt themselves and they've hurt other people, and it's finally become too much, and so something needs to happen. And so as difficult as it might be to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, the need for that is pretty obvious to a person who suffers from a life-destroying addiction. At the very least, they need to examine the ways in which their behavior has been self-destructive, even if it has been somewhat limited to their own lives. But how do we read something like this from an ecological point of view? Well, we could say in the first step we admitted that we were powerless over an addicted society, that our lives had become unsustainable or unmanageable. But then that locates it out there. That's not going to work. There are not going to be any top-down solutions to these problems. Top-down thinking is what got us here. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, and in all the 12-step fellowships, the same wisdom prevails. We are here because our best thinking brought us here. Our best thinking brought us to this room. Our best thinking caused our addiction. Our best thinking has led to global warming. Our best thinking, our most enterprising minds, Thomas Edison, great scientific hero of invention, okay, created the device that has probably caused the greatest holocaust of spiritual consciousness for the past 100,000 years, which is the light bulb, okay, by eroding shadow, by eroding darkness, and by extending the reach of human consciousness beyond its natural limits. That's probably, that one invention by that one man has probably contributed more ill to the world than any other single thing, much worse than oil. Oil is the expression of petrochemicals, or expression of a mind that has already lost touch with its natural limits, lost touch with its own numinous quality. That a mind that is no longer real to itself, a body that is no longer real to itself. Ask, how can we poison ourselves with petrochemicals? How can we poison our atmosphere? And the answer is, you can only do that when you've lost a sense of yourself as a conscious biological being connected to the rhythms of light and dark and to the seasons, like other animals and plants, connected to the earth. So our best thinking brought us here. So it's not, our best thinking is not what's going to get us out of this situation. So step 4 allows us to deconstruct our best thinking. That's really what it is, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Our best thinking is always what gets us into trouble. And we've been doing Bible study in this group for years now, and we've been on Genesis for, it seems like years. We went through the Bible several times, and then finally we went back to Genesis, and instead of sort of like rushing through it like we did in years past, now we decided to take it sort of slow. So we're on chapter 25? Chapter 24 now. And how long have we been in Genesis? 2 years now? About 2 years? Yeah, so we're taking it very, very slow. And we've noticed so many things. One of the things we've noticed is that, you know what the bad word, the really bad word in Genesis is? You'll never guess. Imagination. It's the worst word in Genesis. When God's really, really pissed off at human beings, he speaks about their imagination. what he says. Not so much their wickedness. He says, now nothing will restrain them, what they have imagined to do. Imagined to do. Okay, they've jumped the groove established for them by nature. They have lost their niche in nature, and now the only limit on them is their own imagination, and it's not much of a limit. So we are asked in this step, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, to acknowledge all of the different ways in which we use our consciousness as an act of conquest. All the different ways in which we damage ourselves and others and our environment from the very beginning. Only we make it personal. It's a personal, this is not a species-wide kind of thing. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So the way we go is we think all the way back to our childhood, and then from childhood forward, about all the different ways in which we allowed fear to control our lives. All the ways we've allowed fear. And that's really the nut at the heart of it, of all of this. All of our immoral acts are basically inspired by one kind of fear or another. This, of course, is exactly what Reb Nachman teaches. We've been talking about this for months. Reb Nachman talks about, during the time of prayer, enumerating all of one's yearnings, one's desires, one's faults, one's mistakes, and being willing to make amends for them, to enter into a relationship with God, with oneself, and with other people, and to right wrongs. We speak of doing the same thing, and of course it is rooted in interpersonal relationships primarily, but it also extends to animals and to the earth. However, there is no moral yardstick that's lowered out of the heavens that we use to measure ourselves on this. It is a personal relationship. It is a personal quest that we undertake. We do not compare ourselves to one another. One person's ecological sanity does not look exactly like another person's ecological sanity. We're asked for sanity. We're not asked for reactiveness. We're not asked for a sweeping life change that invites failure right away. This is what usually happens. We're not asked to beat ourselves up. We're not asked to punish ourselves. We're certainly not asked to excuse ourselves either. We're only asked to be honest for the first time in our lives about how we live and how it affects us, how it affects the planet, how it affects other people. And to begin to allow ourselves, and here's the key word, we become willing to move in a different direction. That is really all we can do. If we start forcing programs on ourselves and other people, we will surely fail. Just as every environmental effort to the present time has failed. Every environmental effort up to the present time has ultimately failed. I don't mean that there haven't been small successes here or there, but small successes within larger, vaster failures. The reason they failed is always the same, is that they always involve programs, it always involves top-down authority. It doesn't involve a groundswell of change at the individual level that spread from person to person to person, definitive, permanent change of heart. That's what changes people. That's what happened in the civil rights movement. That's what happened in India when Gandhi led his people to freedom. That's what happened with Moses and the Israelites. We are always liberated in the same way. Because the flame of that liberation is passed from heart to heart until it becomes an overwhelming force for change.